Hi, everyone.
Hi, folks. Ray Franz in The Challenge of Christian Freedom has reached the subhead, Other Fears Inhabiting Spiritual Growth. I was privileged...
Inhibiting.
Thank you. Other fears inhibiting spiritual growth. I was privileged once to be present at the conclusion of a birthing. When the umbilical cord was cut and the baby was placed on the mother's stomach, she said, "Well, little fellow, you're on your own now." It was start of a new life, the life of a unique individual, and I still recall the thrill I experienced on hearing her words to the infant. The being on your own that birth brings, however, does not initially extend very far. The umbilical cord has been cut, but in infancy one is still crucially, helplessly dependent on the care of others. A baby, or even a small child, has an inborn fear of being left alone, an inner sense of vulnerability. As an infant, to be left alone for very long is to die. The process of growing up, of maturing, is one of learning to cope with the concept of independence, of gradually preparing to assume full responsibility for oneself as a person. It is not an easy process, as any parent who has sought to guide a child through it well knows. Adolescence is the time in which a young boy or young girl nears the crossover point from dependency to independency, and it can be a painful, troubling, often confusing time for the child. The success of that transition, or lack of it, has enduring effects on the way we live our lives thereafter. The same is true in our spiritual growth.
In both emotional and spiritual growth, as also our acceptance of the responsibility that freedom brings, hindering factors may include fear of aloneness, a sense of insecurity and impotence. Though no longer small children, we still feel an innate need of others, and not without reason. Even as adults, we generally depend on others for many things in life, providing protection against a variety of dangers, growing the food we need, or making it accessible to us, caring for us in time of illness or of old age, and the filling of many other needs. Along with growth, there also comes the eventual awareness of our own smallness and comparative insignificance when compared with the world in which we live. A sense of aloneness, of isolation, can therefore produce feelings of insecurity, vulnerability, powerlessness, and uncertainty, and can create a compulsion to escape from these feelings by submerging ourselves in something larger.
Some persons have no sense of personal identity, no sense of security, no sense of strength, not even a sense of meaning to their lives, apart from their belonging to some structuralized system, submitting to the external authority the system represents. They will even calm any feelings of doubt and uncertainty that may subsequently arise by simply increasing their submission, and in effect forcing their minds to accept claims of certainty made by the system. Because one suppresses or shuts out the awareness of the problems, it is as if these did not exist. What results is more of a numbing of one's feelings than of genuine relief, an anodyne rather than a healing.
Christian freedom does not promote isolation, but neither does it move us to seek refuge from isolation by the sacrifice of our individuality and personal integrity to some system or organization in exchange for a mere sense of belonging. It calls instead for relationships with others, motivated by love and with spontaneous expressions thereof in acts of useful and productive cooperation.
When one has been submerged in an organization of any size, the thought of disengagement can be disturbing. Having lived in a closed society, with its ties giving a sense of security and the feeling of belonging, the person now faces the challenge of life outside that closed society. That prospect may bring a renewal of anxiety and feelings of impotence. Organizations often play on those feelings, causing the person to feel that leaving their confines will mean being essentially alone and weak in a hostile world. If you leave, where will you go? is the question commonly asked among Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. There's the question, of course, is not where, but to whom, in the original context of John chapter 6.
Mm-hmm.
And that causes me to think about the other text we commonly heard when we were witnesses about isolating oneself, not going to the meetings and isolating oneself from God's organization.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a couple of videos on the principle of isolation, one applied to the governing body itself. That's what makes cults. It's mental and spiritual isolation from other influences, from outside accountability. So to put that up, how the isolation of the governing body actually contributes to their megalomania.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is about
Cults.
cults.
And they're designed to isolate people from other sheep
Yeah.
by drawing them off and saying that this is the group that you have to follow.
Yeah, the principle of separation goes right along with that deliberate isolation. So that's
So
in the destructive religious groups video.
So I remember that verse being used when you were not going to the meetings anymore. My brother used that verse. And I had mentioned to him that we had talked about that verse. But you felt that the organization was the one doing the isolating. So that was a new thought to me at the time, and I'm sure it was to my brother, that really we were the ones that were guilty of isolating ourselves, because we thought this is the only group where we can associate and gain anything.
Safely. Yeah. Yeah.
And yet there were Christians all around us that we wouldn't have anything to do with.
Fantastic resources all around us. All that time we were witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
So that video, which is in the series Slaves of Men, is it?
Yes.
One of those videos we put up as a link as well.